She had nothing but her courage and a trembling hand, yet when she asked him to dance, the world paused, and for one fleeting heartbeat, the millionaire CEO saw her soul instead of her uniform. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Lila wiped the last smear of coffee off the counter, her fingers sticky from caramel syrup. The cafe was quiet now, the hum of the espresso machine the only companion to the late evening drizzle tapping against the window. She sighed, shoulders aching from 12 hours on her feet. Her apron smelled faintly of burnt sugar and old coffee grounds. She glanced outside, watching the city lights blur into streaks in the rain. Some nights, she imagined herself far away from this tiny cafe, in a life that smelled of possibility instead of exhaustion. But for now, she was just Lila, the girl who served lattes with a smile, hiding the hollow ache of being unseen. Across town, in a penthouse overlooking the same rain-slick streets, Ethan adjusted his tie in the reflection of a floor-to-ceiling window. He studied himself, noting the sharp lines of his suit, the practiced confidence in his stance. The party below glittered with socialites, investors, and influencers, all swirling like a carefully choreographed storm. Yet beneath the champagne and laughter, Ethan felt the familiar gnawing emptiness. Deals closed, accolades received, yet still, the echo of loneliness clung to him like a second skin. He wondered if anyone ever saw him beyond the title, beyond the wealth and control. Most didn't. Most couldn't. The evenings stretched on, and fate began its quiet weaving. Lila's friend had convinced her to attend the charity event at Ethan's company, just for a little distraction from the relentless grind. She had worn her only decent dress, the one borrowed from a friend, and smoothed the folds nervously as she entered the gilded ballroom. The chandeliers sparkled above like frozen stars, and laughter ricocheted off marble walls. She felt small, out of place, a waitress among a constellation of wealth. Ethan, meanwhile, circulated with practiced ease, shaking hands and offering polite smiles. He noticed everything: the sparkling jewelry, the tailored suits, the laughter that never quite reached the eyes. But then, something in the corner of the room caught him. A flash of genuine nervousness. A quiet smile that didn't need to impress anyone. And there she was, Lila. Their eyes met across the room for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity. Lila's breath caught. Her fingers twisted the hem of her dress. Ethan's lips quirked in a small, almost imperceptible smile, the kind reserved for moments when something real breaches the polished surface of his world. She hesitated near the edge of the dance floor, watching the swirl of dancers and champagne flutes. It wasn't her world, not even a little, but a whisper of daring nudged her forward. Her heart thumped audibly in her chest, though no one else could hear it. With a deep breath, she walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said, her voice just above a whisper. Ethan turned fully now, curious. "Yes. Would you dance with me?" The words stumbled out, shy but unyielding. The room seemed to pause. Music played, laughter continued, but all of it faded into a soft blur around them. Ethan blinked once, twice, then nodded. "I'd be honored." As he led her to the center of the floor, Lila's nerves buzzed, electric and alive. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt seen, not as a waitress, not as a social underdog, but as someone who mattered, even if only for a single song. Ethan felt it too, the sudden thrill of raw, unguarded connection. The weight he always carried, the expectations, the isolation, dropped just enough to let something human, fragile, and real slip through. They danced awkwardly at first, two strangers feeling their way through a rhythm neither fully knew. Lila's hand trembled in his. Ethan's eyes searched hers as if trying to decipher a secret she didn't yet understand herself. And in that trembling, imperfect moment, the boundaries of their worlds began to blur. The music swelled. The room seemed to shrink until there was only them, her laugh, soft and genuine, and his gaze, steady yet questioning. It was a dance not just of bodies, but of souls recognizing each other across the unlikeliest of divides. And as the song ended, neither moved. The spell lingered, and in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. A promise of change, of possibility, of lives forever altered by a single, brave choice. The first notes of the next song drifted through the ballroom, slower this time, richer, and heavier. Lila felt her pulse quicken, not from nerves, but from the warmth of being truly noticed. Ethan's hand still rested lightly on her waist, his fingers brushing hers in a subtle reassurance. They weren't just dancing, they were meeting in the space between worlds, where wealth and humility, confidence and insecurity, could touch without judgment. "Do you come to these events often?" Ethan asked, his voice quiet over the swelling music. He didn't expect an answer, he just wanted to hear the sound of her words. "Not really," Lila admitted, her gaze dropping for a heartbeat before daring to meet his again. "Usually, I'm behind the counter somewhere, serving coffee to people who don't look up from their phones long enough to notice anything else." Ethan chuckled, but it wasn't the superficial laughter he gave at boardroom meetings. This was softer, a warmth that filled the hollow spaces he rarely let anyone enter. "Then tonight, I'm glad you decided to notice the rest of the world." A blush crept up Lila's cheeks. I wasn't supposed to be here really." Her voice carried the weight of her truth, an undercurrent of humility that only made her more magnetic. "You're exactly where you're meant to be," Ethan said, his eyes locking on hers. There was no condescension, no pity, only attention, and it carved out a tiny island of safety amidst the glittering crowd. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Lila reminded herself that he was untouchable, unreachable. He wore money and power like armor, a world she would never inhabit. Yet the warmth in his gaze, the subtle tilt of his head as he listened, made her stomach flutter. And that small, human moment, so rare, so fragile, demanded courage she didn't even know she had. The song slowed, the rhythm pulsing against their bodies, and Lila felt the collision of everything she had wanted and feared all at once. Her past doubts whispered, "He could never see you as more than a moment." But Ethan's hand squeezed hers lightly, grounding her, saying without words, "I see you." A clink of champagne glasses nearby startled them slightly, snapping the illusion for a heartbeat. Lila laughed nervously, and Ethan mirrored her, sharing a private understanding that the world outside this circle didn't matter, not tonight. "Tell me something real," he said suddenly, his voice low. "Something no one at this party would ever guess about you." Lila hesitated. Truth had always been dangerous. Vulnerability had always been a risk. But something in his eyes made the walls she'd built feel fragile. She swallowed. "I dream of more than this. Of making something of myself, of being recognized not just for serving coffee but for who I am, for what I can create." Ethan's eyebrows lifted, a spark of admiration lighting his gaze. "That's brave. And rare. Most people here wouldn't even know how to hold a dream like that without breaking it into pieces for show." Her throat tightened. He didn't dismiss her. He didn't mock her. He acknowledged her hope as if it mattered, and the honesty of it hit her like a wave. The music shifted, a crescendo that pressed them closer together. A waiter brushed past, spilling a drop of red wine near Lila's shoes. She froze, but Ethan caught her elbow gently, steadying her. "It's okay," he murmured. "Nothing can touch this right now." And in that brief, weightless moment, everything changed. The glittering party faded. The people, the clinking glasses, the perfumed air, they all became background to the collision of two lives. Lila felt a warmth she had never known, a mix of exhilaration and fear, as if the world had tilted and invited her to step off the edge. Ethan felt it too, the pulse of something uncharted, fragile and alive. They swayed in silence for several beats, eyes locking, hearts sinking. Words were unnecessary. The room could have fallen away entirely, and neither would have noticed. Every hesitation, every carefully constructed boundary, dissolved in the presence of one another. Then the song ended. The spell broke, just enough for reality to creep back in. Lila's fingers slipped from his, a subtle recoil born of sudden vulnerability. Ethan noticed, but he didn't pull away. He simply tilted his head, giving her space to process what had just happened. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice trembled, carrying both awe and disbelief. I don't know why I even asked, but thank you. You were brave, Ethan said. And bravery deserves acknowledgement. She laughed softly, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her pulse still racing. I guess we'll never forget this dance, huh? He smiled, but there was a shadow behind it, a question he couldn't yet voice aloud. What happens next? For a heartbeat, they lingered in the collision of worlds, hers fragile and bright, his strong yet tender. And in that pause, something irreversible had begun. The next morning, Lila woke to the sharp buzz of her alarm. Her apartment smelled faintly of instant coffee and rain lingering from the night before. She sat on the edge of her bed, replaying the dance in her mind, every glance, every brush of hands. Her stomach twisted with a mix of exhilaration and fear. She had allowed herself a glimpse into a world that wasn't hers, a world glittering and unattainable. And yet it had felt real. She dressed mechanically, apron in place, hair tied back. The cafe welcomed her with the usual chaos, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of dishes, the murmured complaints of early customers. And still, her mind drifted to him. Ethan. The memory of his gaze, calm yet probing, unsettled her. She shook her head, scolding herself. He's a millionaire. He doesn't belong in my world. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his high-rise office, overlooking the city. The morning sunlight bounced off sleek glass surfaces, but his office felt hollow, sterile. The previous night replayed in his mind, Lila's laugh, the way she'd hesitated yet stepped forward, her quiet courage. He scrolled through emails, but none of it mattered. Every spreadsheet, every meeting, every obligation now seemed like noise. He couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, had breached the walls he'd spent years building. For both of them, the collision of worlds came with its own weight. Lila busied herself with tasks, but every smile to a customer, every tray carried, felt half-hearted. Her coworkers noticed, whispering gently, but she barely registered their words. Fear and pride warred within her. She told herself she had overstepped, that rich men didn't dance with waitresses out of genuine interest, they were indulgent, fleeting. Vulnerability, she reminded herself, was dangerous. Ethan, in contrast, found his usual decisiveness faltering. Decisions that once came effortlessly now dragged, weighed down by the echo of her presence. He caught himself scanning events, wondering if he might see her again, yet the very thought of reaching out felt wrong, impractical, risky, messy. Pride whispered that he should remain detached, that crossing this line could disrupt everything carefully controlled. When their paths crossed later that week, pure coincidence, as Lila served refreshments at a charity luncheon, both felt the tension immediately. Lila's hands shook slightly as she passed him a tray. Ethan's smile was polite but measured. Neither spoke at first, silence stretched between them, a fragile cord charged with unspoken questions. I didn't expect to see you here, Ethan said finally, voice controlled. Me neither, Lila admitted, her tone clipped. Her eyes darted to the floor. Every instinct screamed retreat. She wanted to step back into her ordered, safe world, the one that never demanded exposure. They exchanged a few polite words, carefully neutral. Ethan asked about her studies, her job, her life, but each question felt like an intrusion. Lila offered cautious, minimal replies, hedging her vulnerability. Every glance, every half-smile, carried unvoiced tension. Do I dare trust this moment again? Later, alone, Lila replayed the encounter. Her pulse thumped with longing, but a tighter rhythm of fear clamped over it. I can't belong there. I'll only disappoint him, or myself. She sank into a chair, head in hands, letting exhaustion wash over her. The contrast between the life she knew and the life she glimpsed last night became unbearable. Ethan, in his penthouse, faced a similar internal storm. He leaned against the balcony, staring at the rain-streaked streets below, hands clenched. She had stirred something inside him, a mix of curiosity, desire, and fear. His mind circled possibilities and consequences. Could he allow himself to feel? Could he cross the social chasm without shattering the fragile order of his world? His pride whispered no. His heart, quiet but persistent, whispered yes. The evening arrived. Lila's shift ended, her legs sore, body aching, yet a part of her lingered in the memory of their dance. Ethan appeared at the charity event again, in the corner of her vision, reminding her that life could collide in unexpected ways. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement. But neither stepped forward. Fear, pride, and doubt created an invisible barrier, keeping them apart even as longing pulled them together. The room hummed with conversation, laughter, and clinking glasses, but Lila and Ethan were trapped in parallel orbits. Every word exchanged was measured, every gesture restrained. Connection existed in small bursts, a glance here, a subtle smile there, but it was fleeting, unfinished. They both knew something was shifting, yet neither had the courage to dismantle the walls guarding their hearts. By the end of the night, Lila retreated into herself, exhausted not just from the day but from the emotional tension she couldn't name. Ethan lingered near the door, watching her leave, torn between following her and protecting himself from vulnerability. And in the quiet aftermath, both understood the truth they were resisting. Some collisions were too profound to ignore, even when fear demanded withdrawal. A week later, Lila found herself standing at the entrance of a bustling charity gala, not by choice, but because her cafe had been hired to provide catering for the event. She tugged at her dress nervously, wishing she could disappear into the crowd of polished heels and tailored suits. Every instinct screamed retreat. Yet fate had a way of cornering her into the impossible. Ethan leaned against the far side of the grand hall, scanning the crowd with casual detachment. His eyes caught her immediately. Unlike last time, he didn't approach. Instead, he observed, the subtle tension in her posture mirroring the unease he felt himself. When she looked back, their gazes collided, a silent acknowledgement of the delicate thread connecting them. As the night unfolded, circumstances forced them into proximity. A last-minute seating arrangement for the gala's charity auction paired them at the same table. Neither spoke at first. Lila's fingers grazed the edge of her napkin, the faint tremor betraying her calm facade. Ethan sipped his water, eyes flicking to her as though trying to read a story written only in the lines of her expression. "You don't belong here," he said quietly, almost to himself, yet loud enough for her to hear. She bristled, meeting his gaze. "And yet, here I am. Some things you don't get to control." His lips twitched, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "True. Some things break through the walls we build around ourselves." The table conversation drifted between other guests, yet Lila and Ethan's attention remained tethered to one another. Small gestures, a brush of a hand, a shared glance, became charged, revealing cracks in their defenses. Neither dared speak too much, yet every unspoken word carried weight. Later, a mishap at the dessert station forced Lila and Ethan to work together. A tray of delicate pastries wobbled precariously, and without thinking, Ethan caught it just as Lila's hand hovered above, uncertain. Their fingers met briefly, lingering longer than necessary. "You're careful," he noted, handing her the tray. "I have to be," she said, a hint of defiance in her tone. "Otherwise, everything falls apart." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, he saw more than the cautious waitress. He saw determination, resilience, and the quiet fire that refused to bow under pressure. Their shared tasks, organizing, coordinating, smoothing over minor disasters, pulled them into an unspoken rhythm. They moved like two dancers again, but this time with mutual trust, each recognizing the other's competence and heart. It was a subtle intimacy, grounded in action rather than words. By the end of the evening, they found a quiet corner near a balcony overlooking the city. The wind teased Lila's hair, and the distant hum of traffic blended with soft laughter from inside. Neither spoke immediately. The space between them carried tension, understanding, and the fragile beginnings of trust. "You're different than I expected," Ethan finally said. Lila arched a brow. "I hope that's good." "It is," he admitted, the weight of sincerity grounding his voice. "You're real. Honest. Not performing for anyone." Her chest tightened, not from fear this time, but from recognition. Someone had seen through the masks, past the polish and pretense, and acknowledged her quietly without judgment. "I don't belong here," she whispered, almost to herself. And yet, I feel like I do when I'm with you. He reached for her hand, a tentative bridge. Then stay here a little longer. With me. The night wrapped around them, a cocoon of possibility. Lila felt her defenses soften, even if just slightly. Ethan allowed himself a small taste of vulnerability, acknowledging that genuine connection was worth the risk. They didn't need words for every thought. The shared glances, the subtle touches, the rhythm of cooperation spoke volumes. And in that quiet balcony moment, the world seemed distant. Here, they could exist without judgment, without social divides, without fear. The walls between them, though not completely dismantled, wavered in the presence of mutual respect, understanding, and the faint, undeniable spark of something more. The following week, Lila's phone buzzed relentlessly. A flurry of invitations, reminders, and work notifications created a constant background hum she could neither escape nor ignore. Exhausted, she finally sank onto her couch, eyes catching the glow of a message she hadn't expected. "Can we meet?" From Ethan. Her heart raced, a cocktail of excitement and trepidation. She wanted to say yes immediately, to see him, to step back into the warmth they had built. Yet a shadow of doubt curled in her chest. What am I doing? He's a millionaire, a world I don't belong in. He could lose interest in a heartbeat. Meanwhile, Ethan was pacing his penthouse, the city lights below twinkling like 1,000 reminders of everything he'd built, and everything he feared losing. He typed and deleted messages, unable to capture the right balance of honesty and restraint. Finally, he hit send. His thumb hovered, trembling slightly, over the send button. Vulnerability, raw and unshielded, felt terrifying. They met at a small cafe, a compromise between her world and his. The contrast was stark. She arrived in simple attire, sneakers barely visible beneath her jeans. He in a crisp jacket that seemed to hum with wealth. For a moment, neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. The air was heavy with anticipation and unspoken questions. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Ethan admitted, voice low. "I know I've complicated things." Lila stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, the steam curling around her fingers. "Complicated is one way to put it," she said softly, though her gaze was steady. "I don't know what to think. About you. About us." He swallowed hard, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "I didn't mean to." "You don't understand," Lila interrupted, her voice shaking now, edge sharpened by hurt. "I've lived in a world where people look at me and see nothing. Last week I felt visible. And now," her hand shook slightly, as if the mere act of holding it together was exhausting. "Now I feel like I was just a distraction. Something fun, temporary, that doesn't belong in your real life." Ethan's chest tightened. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Lila, you weren't a distraction. Not then, not now. I've never met anyone like you. You matter." Tears pricked her eyes. "Then why does it feel like I don't? Like I'm still on the outside looking in?" The cafe fell away around them. The low hum of chatter, the clinking of cups, the smell of fresh coffee, all faded into the background. All that remained was the collision of truth and fear, raw and painful. Ethan reached for her hand, but she hesitated, pulling back instinctively. I can't risk being hurt again," she whispered, voice tight with the weight of every disappointment she'd ever carried. He closed his eyes briefly, feeling the sting of helplessness. "And I can't promise there won't be mistakes," he admitted, voice barely audible. "But I can promise that I'll try. That I'll show you every day that you're not invisible to me." A long silence followed. Lila's chest rose and fell rapidly. She had fought this vulnerability for years, and now, here it was, threatening to unravel her carefully constructed walls. Every instinct screamed retreat, yet a part of her wanted to stay, wanted to believe. Then came the confrontation that neither could avoid. Ethan's past, carefully hidden, leaked into their fragile world. A mutual acquaintance at the cafe whispered rumors about his business dealings, framing him as ruthless and manipulative. Lila's eyes widened as words she couldn't ignore reached her ears. Does he really care about anyone? Or is he just playing another game? Pain shot through her chest, a familiar ache she had fought to suppress. "So, this is who you really are," she said, voice breaking. "All this world you live in. It's not me, Ethan. I can't be part of it." Ethan leaned back, stunned, frustration and helplessness coiling inside him. "No, Lila. That's not true. You know me, what you saw at the gala, what you felt, that's real. Everything else doesn't define who I am with you." But she shook her head, tears spilling now freely. I can't risk it. I need to protect myself." And just like that, the fragile bridge they had built cracked. Ethan wanted to reach for her, to argue, to pull her into certainty, but he knew he couldn't. He could only watch as she stood, gathered her bag, and walked out, leaving him surrounded by the empty hum of a cafe that suddenly felt far too large. The collision had been complete. Vulnerability clashed with fear. Truth clashed with rumor. Desire clashed with doubt. And now, they were both left in the wreckage, he, frustrated and lonely, she, torn between longing and self-preservation. Yet somewhere in the raw ache of that moment, the seed of something unbroken remained. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it pulsed quietly beneath the hurt, a recognition that what they shared was real, even if neither could act on it yet. Days stretched into restless nights for Lila. Every spare moment, her mind circled back to Ethan, the curve of his smile, the warmth in his eyes, the way he had made her feel seen. She tried to busy herself at the cafe, yet each task felt hollow, the coffee orders and clinking cups a poor substitute for the connection she couldn't shake. Her heart ached with the question she couldn't voice. Can I let myself hope again? Ethan, too, wrestled with uncertainty. In the solitude of his penthouse, the city lights stretching endlessly below, he weighed pride against desire, logic against instinct. The encounters, the moments shared, the unspoken vulnerability, they had been real, yet he had let fear and misunderstanding push her away. Now, the echo of her absence pressed against his chest with relentless insistence. Do I wait for her to return, or do I reach for what matters, even if it terrifies me? The decision crystallized the following evening, during a storm that painted the city in streaks of silver rain. Lila was leaving the cafe, umbrella shielding her from the drizzle, when she noticed him across the street, waiting. No entourage, no polished facade, just Ethan, soaked slightly by rain, eyes searching until they found hers. Her heart leapt and sank in the same rhythm. The familiar surge of hope battled with the armor she had rebuilt after the breaking point. She froze, hands gripping the umbrella tightly, every instinct screaming caution. He took a step forward, then another, his voice carrying across the distance. Lila, I can't let this end like this. Not after everything we've shared. Her fingers loosened around the umbrella. Ethan, let me finish, he said, voice steady despite the drizzle plastering his hair to his forehead. I've been afraid, yes. Afraid of losing control, afraid of being hurt, afraid of hurting you. But I realized something. Life without you is a risk I cannot take. Not anymore. Lila's chest tightened. Rain dripped onto her face, but it barely registered. She had been protecting herself for so long, yet in the echo of his words, all her carefully placed walls trembled. I can't promise perfection, Ethan continued. I can't erase the past, the rumors, the fears. But I can promise you this, every day I will try. I will show up. I will see you, really see you, and I will protect what we have, not because it's convenient, but because it matters. The sincerity in his gaze, the raw vulnerability of his admission, cut through her hesitation like sunlight through clouds. Lila felt a tremor of courage rise within her, the same courage that had led her to ask him to dance, the courage she had nearly abandoned in fear. I want to trust you, she whispered, voice trembling yet resolute. I've built walls so high, I wasn't sure I could ever let anyone in. But you make me want to try. Ethan closed the distance between them, extending a hand. Then let's try together. Her fingers brushed his, tentative at first, then entwined with certainty. Every misstep, every hesitation of the past week evaporated, leaving only this moment. A choice made not from convenience or ease, but from desire, courage and love. They walked through the rain, unafraid of getting wet, unafraid of the world around them. The storm became a backdrop to their decision, a cleansing force that mirrored the emotional clarity between them. Every shared step solidified the trust they had begun to build, transforming vulnerability into strength. Later, as they reached the quiet of her apartment building, Lila turned to him, the weight of the week pressing against her chest. "I was terrified," she admitted. "Terrified of losing myself in someone else's world, of being hurt again." He smiled softly, cupping her cheek with one hand. "And yet, here you are. Brave, honest, and alive. That's exactly why I want you. Because you're real, because you matter, and because I can't imagine life without you." Lila laughed softly, tears mingling with the rain on her cheeks. "I guess I choose us." "And I choose us too," Ethan replied, voice steady, unwavering. "Every day from now on." In the quiet aftermath of the storm, they stood together, soaked yet unbroken, hearts aligned. The choice had been made. Love had won, not without fear, not without risk, but with courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to confront every barrier between them. For the first time in years, Lila and Ethan felt complete, not because the world had changed, but because they had chosen each other. Weeks had passed since that rainy evening, yet the memory of their choice lingered in every glance, every laugh, every shared silence. Lila moved through her cafe with renewed energy, her smile now carrying the quiet confidence of someone finally seen. She no longer felt invisible. She had someone who recognized her heart, her courage, and her worth. Ethan, too, had shifted. Meetings still demanded his attention, deadlines still loomed, but the loneliness that had once shadowed his days had been replaced by something far more profound, a sense of purpose grounded not in wealth or accolades, but in connection. Every thought of Lila brought warmth, clarity, and a quiet, steadfast joy. They had begun carving out shared time amidst their separate worlds, meeting for morning coffees, walking along quiet city streets, and occasionally stealing moments in the bustling halls of charity events. Each encounter deepened their bond, built on trust, laughter, and the understanding that love was as much about choosing each other repeatedly as it was about sparks and stolen glances. One crisp autumn evening, Ethan invited Lila to the same ballroom where it had all begun. The chandeliers gleamed like frozen stars, the music a soft hum of familiar melodies. Lila's heart fluttered, not with nerves this time, but anticipation and delight. She stepped in, and Ethan was already there, standing quietly by the grand window, his expression soft yet intense. "You remembered," she whispered, her eyes tracing the same room where fear and hope had collided weeks before. "I could never forget," he said. "This is where it started, after all. And it's where I want every new beginning to be." They moved to the center of the floor, the polished wood reflecting the golden light of the chandeliers. Hands entwined, hearts aligned, they danced, not awkwardly this time, but with a rhythm born of trust and intimacy. Each step was a testament to courage, each glance a promise fulfilled. Around them, the crowd continued, unaware of the private universe forming in the space between Lila and Ethan. The music rose and fell, but it no longer mattered. They were tethered not by sound, but by something far deeper: recognition, acceptance, and the quiet triumph of love that had weathered fear, misunderstanding, and doubt. As the song drew to a close, Ethan leaned closer, voice soft yet steady. "Lila, every moment with you has been worth the risk, every misstep worth the lesson. You taught me to open my heart, and I hope I've shown you the same courage." Tears shimmered in her eyes, not of fear, but of joy. "You did," she whispered. "You showed me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, being real, and choosing each other even when it's hard." He smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Then let's keep choosing each other, every day." And in that quiet, radiant moment, they did. The weight of past doubts, misunderstandings, and societal divides lifted, replaced by the unshakable truth that what they shared was real, resilient, and enduring. Later, as they stepped out onto the balcony, the city sprawled beneath them, awash in streetlights and the soft glow of evening windows. Ethan wrapped an arm around Lila, pulling her close. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady heartbeat beneath her ear, a rhythm that matched her own. "It's funny," Lila murmured, "how a single dance can change everything." Ethan chuckled, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "It's not the dance," he said softly. "It's the courage to take it. That was the real change." She smiled, closing her eyes, letting the wind tug at her hair, letting the moment stretch into eternity. The city around them buzzed and shimmered, but here, together, nothing else existed. Fear, pride, doubt, they all seemed distant now, replaced by the quiet, luminous certainty of love. And as the night deepened, Lila and Ethan stood there, hand in hand, hearts aligned, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their worlds had collided, fractured, and ultimately fused, not because life had been easy, but because they had dared to trust, to hope, and to choose each other despite everything. The memory of that first dance, nervous and uncertain, lingered as an echo in their hearts. It had been the spark, the catalyst, and now it was a promise, a reminder that love, unexpected and transformative, could arrive at the most unlikely moment and endure through courage and honesty. As the city lights flickered beneath them, Lila whispered, "I never imagined this." Ethan tightened his hold, smiling down at her. "Neither did I. But I'm grateful every day that we found our way here." They stayed there a long while, wrapped in warmth and quiet triumph, letting the city hum beneath them, letting their hearts speak without words. And in that shared silence, the story closed where it had begun, in a dance, in vulnerability, in the choice to believe that love, when genuine and fearless, always finds a way. Have you ever found love when you least expected it? Share your story in the comments. You might remind someone that taking a leap of faith can change everything. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.